Cyclone Biparjoy inland, Atlantic storm possible on tonight's tropical weather bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical weather bulletin for June 16th. Cyclone Biparjoy made landfall earlier on in the late hours of last night local time, just before midnight. Landfall occurred there in the western part of Gujarat, India. Code red still in place for that storm, as it's likely to produce extreme amounts of rainfall on the southern side of its path. It's day 16 of Atlantic hurricane season, and this area of interest we're now giving a 30% chance of development across the main development region of the Atlantic. One might say it's a little bit early for this kind of system to start up in the MDR, but it certainly isn't, and we might see something form out of that. Day 33 in the Eastern Pacific, we've still got two areas on the radar, both of them still low chances though, 20% of the current system that's further out to sea, but doesn't have very much space to work with, or indeed very much time. In the Western Pacific, it's quiet actually, although there is quite a bit of storms around by the looks of things, at least normal standard storms, not tropical cyclones. And of course we've got Cyclone Biparjoy, which is moving inland, hasn't moved that far inland yet, and is starting to really lose its shape and intensity in the last few hours. Made landfall probably near hurricane force, and its estimate now is probably around 60 miles per hour in terms of sustained winds. Let's look at satellite imagery in the last 24 hours, and you can see the impact that we've seen across western India there, although interestingly not a massive rain profile until it just made landfall towards the end there, where we had a little bank of convection that blew up some more. Bangladesh also getting quite a bit of precipitation there from a low pressure system too. And here is a close-up of Biparjoy then as it continues to move inland fairly slowly. As mentioned, it will briefly track into extreme southeastern Pakistan before continuing back into India once again and through the Rajasthan region. You can see here its movement over that last about 12 hours or so, and you can see it's still looking decent on a close-up view, but from a distance perhaps it probably doesn't look so hot. Certainly it's rotating decently still, and it's got at least part of an eye wall still intact. Infrared is fairly sloppy, but this system still has a decent wind field and is probably holding on to a lot of its winds, particularly on that southern side where we've got some big convection there, where no doubt there's lots of rainfall occurring. Look at radar, and you'll see there it's the south and western side that's really showing up here. This is from the Karachi radar though, so eastern side will be more difficult to see, but nonetheless it's looking fine. And here's a quick look at the Atlantic across the coast of Africa and that area of interest that's just off the coast there to the southeast of Cape Verde. Sea surface temperatures right now are still pretty good south of Mexico, and still climbing near 32 degrees Celsius now. Extremely warm Eastern Pacific, but quite a cool area out at sea. In the Atlantic, everything's really pretty much set ready for significant tropical activity in a few areas near 30 degrees Celsius in the Western Caribbean, and a few spots there in the Gulf of Mexico also looking good. Gulf Stream also ready and piping hot all the way up and beyond the Outer Banks. Western Pacific also looks good, building back in after the two recent typhoons. Temperatures are commonly around 30 degrees Celsius near the Mariana Islands and all around the Philippine Islands right now. South China Sea also looking good there, with warm temperatures extending north as far as the southern Japanese islands. Indian Ocean, it hasn't caused a huge dent in the Arabian Sea there, Cyclone Biparjoy, but a few cool spots relative to what we've seen recently. Southwest Indian Ocean is obviously in its downtime now, but you can see there that those water temperatures are receding, and in the Australian region a similar story with around 28 degrees in just a few spots off the coast of mainland Australia. South Pacific as well, 26 degrees just around the southern parts of Fiji. The anomalies then, you can quite clearly see the El Nino effect really building in there in the eastern Pacific and a warm pool south of Mexico, but it's quite interesting to note there's still a sizable cool area in the main part, or the further out to sea part of the eastern Pacific. Atlantic is really warm compared to average all across the tropical zone, especially further east, which might aid that potential cyclone later into next week, and still a cool trail in the western Pacific behind Typhoon Mawar and a little bit from Gujarat. Here is the Caribbean, and you can see there some significant hot points now in the oceanic heat content, and into the Pacific, also looking decent in the eastern Pacific, which is well ahead of where we were last year. Western Pacific is piping hot and ready to go as soon as anything reaches that area that's got decent conditions with wind shear and the like. Very, very high energy levels. GFS model then shows the next 5 days in the Atlantic and this potential system that really gets itself going quite quickly. GFS is the most aggressive of the models so far, but most of them are on board. Just the ECMWF went backwards a little bit on this one, and that's why we're only keeping it at 30%, otherwise we probably would have increased. There it is then, moving west-northwestwards and getting quite strong, almost to hurricane strength briefly there in the middle of the Atlantic before weakening. Eastern Pacific, look out for two weak systems. First one on the left hand side, you barely even see, and then this second system that starts to pop in, and there it is. And that one actually does become a brief tropical storm possibly there from the GFS model, but it is very tentative and other models aren't really on board with this yet, and it's only a weak signal, so 10 and a 20% chance over there in the Eastern Pacific, but this may not turn out to occur, but we'll wait and see. And here is Biparjoy, which continues inland over the course of the next few hours. GFS interestingly have a more east-northeasterly trend there rather than due northeast, but weakening there gradually, and the GFS curiously has it surviving for quite a bit there, near hurricane equivalent strength, and actually strengthening. Look at that, that's crazy. I'm not sure that's going to happen at all. I really don't see that actually, and then it finally dies down to the south of New Delhi. So bearing that in mind, GFS is probably overdoing some re-intensification. Here is the rainfall profile over the next few days. Now you'll see the initial blob from where it currently is in the Kutch region, which is generating quite a lot of rainfall, and then this massive area of even higher rainfall if the storm gets some kind of boost, if not in intensity then maybe in convection. So that is the GFS there forecasting nearly 26 inches of rainfall inland there, and that is around 650 millimeters of rainfall and 16 inches near the landfall zone, in addition to what we've already seen, and that would total well, that's 400 millimeters on its own. I'm not sure how much has fallen at the moment, but it probably is getting up to significant values, so who knows, that's probably 500 millimeters around that coastal area as well. And those wider areas too getting a little bit of rainfall, only 0.2 inches now though in Karachi. In the medium range, this is day 5 to 10. What happens in the Atlantic? Well, GFS has thrown us another curveball, and now it's forecasting this system to re-strengthen and get to hurricane status as it passes Puerto Rico and continues west-northwestwards. Uh-oh, could this be trouble for the US southeast? Big question mark there, heading towards the Turks and Caicos Islands as a hurricane. Who'd have thunk it at this time of year? Well, we'll see whether that actually transpires, but big question mark over whether that actually happens. Western Pacific in this longer range as well, day 5 to 10, we're looking at a potential system in the Philippine Sea and possibly a second system that forms not far from Guam. So this was signaled on last night's update as well. Something similar to this, storms that form quite quickly there towards the end of that 10-day period in the case of the eastern system, but the former one on the western side there nearing the Philippines quite early on, and then it's making its final approach to Luzon on the 25th and then out over the South China Sea. Interesting. That's all the serious stuff done though. You can take a look at the Force 13 merch store by scanning the barcode and taking a look at all of our items, including full season and individual storm animations on request. Also, are still waiting for Hone t-shirt, which you'll probably outgrow easily by the time Hone forms. Slobbing about on the couch probably. Anyway, this long range showing this system in the Atlantic getting very strong, category 2 or 3 there, as it does a recurve, so it doesn't affect the United States, at least at first, and then turns north and northeast. So there it is again, watching closely, and you may have seen another system just forming in the Caribbean there at the end of that as well, by the way. But watch this system, continues northwards, then bends northeastwards and goes on to affect possibly Newfoundland. But this is all extremely long range, and I wouldn't put a dime on that yet. Western Pacific, what happens with these two systems? The first one heads towards Hong Kong and the other one continues northwestwards, and both of them are feeling sorry for themselves by the time they reach their final destinations there. Not much left of them, either of them, by the time they reach Hong Kong and Japan respectively. That first system there reaching Hong Kong barely as a tropical storm. The second one also just passing Okinawa and the Amami Islands barely as anything at all there, probably turning post-tropical. Lots to talk about there, including severe weather tonight in the United States as well. You can talk about anything in the weather world and beyond on our Discord server, discord.gg/force13, for all kinds of chat with over 3,400 members right now. We don't bite. It sounds like a lot, but to be honest, it's quite quiet sometimes, especially in the mornings. June 16th, 2004 saw an extreme typhoon peak in the form of Diarmu, an extremely pretty storm near its peak intensity, with a massive area of banding down towards its southwest and a very, very pretty eye with massive cloud tops in its inner eye wall. Extremely impressive storm. Some estimates have it probably in excess of 180 miles per hour, and a pressure estimate in the 870s, would you believe, actually, according to the JTWC 879. Back to today, and the next name on the Atlantic naming list might come sooner than we think. It's Brett. In the Eastern Pacific, Adrian, any sign of it yet? Question mark. And the Central Pacific, no sign of it yet, definitely. Hone is the next name on that list. In the Western Pacific, next up is Talim, and in the North Indian Ocean, we are looking out for Tej. Biparjoy will be on its way out fairly soon, and we're pretty pleased about that. 23 storms so far in 2023, and in 14 or 15 days, the Southwest Indian Ocean will roll over to a new naming list, but the next name at the moment is Gizani, Australian region Jasper, and the South Pacific Lola. We'll be back again with another tropical weather bulletin tomorrow night.